The smell of rot was suffocating. The once pristine floors of Westgate Mall were littered with shattered glass, overturned display racks, and bloodstains that had dried into dark, crusted reminders of the massacre that had happened here. Outside, the dead groaned, their lifeless eyes locked onto the building, pressing against the barricades as if sheer will alone could force them inside. Inside, the survivors tried to convince themselves they were safe. Danny knelt by the entrance, flashlight beam scanning the makeshift barricade they had built hours earlier, shelves, benches, even a vending machine pushed up against the glass doors. It held. For now. "This won't last," murmured Rachel, a woman in her late 20s with a deep cut across her cheek, her blonde hair matted with dirt. She leaned against the counter, gripping a rusted crowbar. "We need a real way out." "We needed that 2 days ago," muttered Carter, the oldest in the group, a grizzled man who had once been a security guard at the mall before the world went to hell. He checked the bullets in his pistol, only 3 left. Danny sighed, running a hand through his sweat-drenched hair. "If we try to leave now, we're dead." He gestured toward the main entrance, where 100 pairs of dead hands clawed at the glass. "But if we stay here too long?" The alternative was worse. The group consisted of 6, Danny, Rachel, Carter, a teenage boy named Tyler, an anxious woman named Mia, and a man no one really trusted, Ethan. Ethan was trouble. Too eager to take charge, too quick to suggest leaving someone behind when things got tough. Danny didn't like the way the man's dark eyes scanned the group, as if deciding who was useful and who wasn't. "We should check the service tunnels again," Rachel said, pushing off the counter. "Maybe there's another way out." "I already told you," Carter grunted, "the tunnels are flooded with those things." "Maybe we missed something." Mia shook her head violently. "Going back there is suicide. We barely made it out last time." "Then what?" "We just wait?" Rachel snapped. "We'll starve before they leave." Hey, Danny stepped between them. "Let's not turn on each other." Ethan chuckled from the corner, leaning against a shelf stacked with expired candy bars. "That's exactly what's gonna happen if we don't figure this out soon." Tension thickened. The mall, once a place of comfort and mindless consumerism, had turned into a prison. Then it happened. A loud crash echoed through the halls. Every head snapped toward the source of the sound, toward the second floor. The sound of metal hitting tile. Something falling. Something moving. Danny's stomach twisted. The dead were outside. So who the hell had made that noise inside? Tyler gripped Danny's arm. What was that?" No one answered. Danny motioned for silence, gripping his knife tighter. He moved toward the escalator, where the upper floor loomed in eerie darkness. The dim emergency lights cast long shadows over mannequins, making them look like frozen corpses. Another sound. Then, a whisper. "Help!" Danny's breath hitched. That wasn't one of them. Rachel stepped beside him, eyes wide. "Someone's alive up there." Mia shook her head. "No. No way. It could be a trap. It could be." The whisper came again, weaker this time. "Please." A choice. Risk everything to check it out, or stay put and let them die. Danny's gut twisted. They were barely holding on as it was. But leaving someone to die wasn't an option, not if they wanted to stay human. He turned to the group. "We check it out. Carter, Ethan, you're with me. Rachel, you stay here with Mia and Tyler." Ethan smirked. "Always sending me into danger, huh?" Danny ignored him. Weapon raised, he started up the escalator, each step creaking beneath his weight. The darkness swallowed them as they reached the top. A store lay ahead, its sign half-hanging, Electromart. The whisper had come from inside. Danny took a breath and stepped forward. Then, the world exploded into chaos. From the shadows, a figure lunged, a man, clothes torn, eyes wide with madness. He wasn't a zombie, but he was feral, desperate. He swung a metal pipe at Danny's head. Danny barely dodged in time. The pipe slammed into the wall. Shit! Carter raised his gun. Wait! Danny shouted, grabbing the attacker's arm, forcing him back. The man thrashed wildly. They're coming! They heard me, the stranger screamed. From outside, the moaning of the undead grew louder. And then, from deeper in the store, an ear-splitting shriek. More than one. Danny's blood ran cold. They weren't alone. Danny barely had time to react before the stranger tried to wrench himself free, his wild eyes darting around the dark store. We have to go. They heard me, the man panted, his breath ragged. Carter grabbed his collar and shoved him against a shelf. Who the hell are you? Eli. My name's Eli, the man gasped. Let me go, you don't understand. A guttural moan echoed from deep within Electromart. Then another. Then many. Ethan took a step back. Shit. We need to move. Now. Danny let go of Eli and turned toward the entrance, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. But before they could take another step, the first zombie stumbled into view. It had once been a security guard, but now its uniform was shredded, its flesh hanging from its arms like torn cloth. Its milky white eyes locked onto them, and with a sickening gurgle, it lunged. Carter fired. Boom! The gunshot shattered the eerie quiet, echoing through the mall like a warning bell. The guard's skull burst open, and it crumpled to the floor. Then, from beyond the store, a chorus of moans rose in response. Danny's stomach dropped. That single gunshot had just invited every zombie in the area straight to them. Run, he ordered. Eli didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted toward the escalator, the others following close behind. Danny risked a glance behind him, and his blood turned to ice. A horde. At least 20 of them, pouring out of the shadows like a flood of death. Some shambled, others ran, their hungry growls growing louder. They hit the escalator at full speed, feet pounding against metal. Below, Rachel and the others saw them coming, their eyes going wide. Open fire! Danny shouted as he leaped down the last few steps. Rachel raised her crossbow and fired, a bolt lodging itself in a zombie's skull. Ethan shoved a shelf down the escalator, slowing the pursuit. The group made it back to the entrance barricade, gasping for breath. Tyler's voice shook. What the hell happened up there? Danny turned to Eli. You better start talking. Fast. Eli wiped sweat from his brow, still catching his breath. I was hiding in the ventilation system. Thought I was safe. But those things, they learn. I swear to God, they learn. Mia frowned. That's not possible. Eli shook his head. I thought so too. Until they started waiting for me. They knew I had to come out eventually. They weren't just wandering around mindless. They were watching. The group fell silent. Danny didn't know what to think. Could the zombies actually be getting smarter? The idea sent a chill down his spine. Then, from outside, the groaning grew louder. Rachel's face went pale. She pointed at the barricade. Ah, guys? Danny turned, and his stomach clenched. The horde outside was growing. Dozens of zombies had gathered, their lifeless eyes fixed on the glass. More were arriving by the second, drawn by the gunshot. Hands pounded against the barricade. The glass door shuddered. They were running out of time. Carter cursed. That barricade's not gonna hold much longer. Danny clenched his jaw. Then we need a new plan. Rachel turned to Eli. You said you were in the vents, right? Is there a way out through them? Eli hesitated. And maybe. But I only used them to get from store to store. I never found a way outside. Danny glanced toward the maintenance hallway. Then we checked them again. Ethan crossed his arms. And if there's no exit? Danny took a deep breath. Then we find another way. A loud crack echoed through the mall. Everyone froze. The glass. It was breaking. The moans grew into a frenzied roar as the undead outside pushed harder. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface. Danny turned back to the group. "Move. Now." They ran. The mall trembled with the sound of pounding fists. Behind them, the first shards of glass shattered to the floor. And then the barricade collapsed. The dead poured in. The nightmare was just beginning. The barricade collapsed with a deafening crash, and the undead flooded inside like a living avalanche of rot and decay. Danny didn't look back. He didn't have to. The guttural moans, the sound of scraping nails against tile, and the sickening thump of bodies tripping over the debris were enough to send his adrenaline into overdrive. "Move! Now!" he shouted, pushing forward. The group sprinted toward the maintenance hallway, their footsteps echoing through the cavernous mall. Rachel led the way, gripping her crossbow, while Eli scrambled to keep up, his breath ragged. Ethan was right beside Danny, glancing over his shoulder. "They're too fast. We need to slow them down." "How?" Carter barked, barely keeping pace. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed one of the metal carts from a nearby kiosk and shoved it behind them. It clattered to the floor, tripping a few zombies. But the rest simply climbed over their fallen brethren, their hunger unrelenting. The hallway was close. Danny dove for the door and yanked it open. Inside. Inside. One by one, they rushed in, with Carter slamming the door behind them. He twisted the lock and braced his body against it. "That won't hold," Rachel panted. A loud bang rattled the door. Then another. The zombies were already trying to force their way through. Danny turned to Eli. "The vents, where?" Eli pointed toward a rusted ladder leading up to an air duct. "There. But I don't know how far it goes." "We don't have a choice." Rachel climbed first, wrenching open the vent cover. She pulled herself inside, her breathing heavy. "It's tight, but we can fit." "Go!" Danny ordered. One by one, they climbed up, Rachel, Mia, Tyler, and Eli. Danny was about to follow when he heard a click. His blood ran cold. Ethan had drawn his pistol. And he was aiming it at Carter. "What the hell are you doing?" Danny growled. Ethan smirked. "Buying myself some time." Carter's eyes widened. "You son of a..." Boom! The gunshot echoed through the hallway. Carter stumbled back, a fresh hole in his shoulder. He collapsed against the door, blood seeping through his shirt. Danny lunged at Ethan, but the man was already backing away toward the ladder. "Sorry, Danny. But let's be real. You're not all making it out of this alive." He climbed up and disappeared into the vent. Danny turned to Carter, who clutched his wound, his face contorted in pain. The door shook violently, splintering under the weight of the undead. There was no time. "Come on," Danny hissed, hooking Carter's arm over his shoulder. He dragged him toward the ladder. Carter gritted his teeth. "Just leave me." "Not a chance." Danny shoved him up. Carter groaned as he gripped the ladder with his good arm, forcing himself upward. Danny climbed after him, barely making it into the vent before the door burst open. The undead swarmed in, their blood-stained fingers reaching for the ladder, their rotting faces twisted with hunger. Danny yanked the vent cover shut, plunging them into darkness. The horde screamed beneath them, denied their meal. For now. The vent was cramped. Danny's shoulders scraped against the metal as he crawled forward, Carter's labored breathing echoing ahead. He could feel the heat of the others in front of him, all of them packed together like sardines. Rachel's voice whispered from up ahead. "What happened?" Danny clenched his jaw. "Ethan shot Carter." A stunned silence. Then Mia cursed under her breath. "That bastard," Rachel muttered. Danny kept moving, his muscles aching with every inch forward. They had no idea where this vent led, but as long as it kept them out of reach of the dead, it was their only option. Eli whispered, I think we're above the loading dock." Danny exhaled. If they could get to the loading dock, there might be an exit. Or, at the very least, supplies. A loud thump echoed through the vent. Everyone froze. Danny's breath hitched. That wasn't from below. That was from above. Another thump. Then a scraping sound. Something else was in the vents. Keep moving, Danny whispered. Tyler whimpered softly, but he crawled forward, the rest following. The metal creaked beneath them. Then, a shadow moved ahead. Danny barely had time to react before something lunged from the darkness. A zombie. It had been crawling in the vents, waiting. It grabbed Eli's ankle and sank its teeth in. Eli screamed. Panic erupted. Rachel tried to yank Eli forward, but the zombie held tight, growling as it tore flesh from his leg. Danny acted on instinct. He grabbed his knife and drove it into the zombie's skull. The creature spasmed before going limp, its head dangling over the vent's edge. But the damage was done. Eli panted, his entire body trembling. Blood poured from his shredded leg. Mia's voice was barely a whisper. Oh, God. Everyone knew what it meant. Eli wasn't going to make it. Danny met his eyes, and for the first time, Eli didn't look afraid. He looked resigned. Keep going, Eli murmured. You don't have much time. Danny's heart ached, but he nodded. They kept crawling. Behind them, Eli sighed. Then the vent creaked. And his body disappeared into the darkness below. Eli's scream was cut short as his body plummeted into the darkness below. Danny didn't look back. He couldn't. The others hesitated, their breathing ragged, but he whispered harshly, keep moving. Rachel swallowed hard. We could go back for him. No, Carter muttered through clenched teeth. His wound was still bleeding, his breath shaky. He's gone. The silence that followed was suffocating. They crawled forward, their movements slow and careful. Every creak of the vent made their nerves snap tighter. Danny focused on the path ahead. They had to reach the loading dock. If they didn't, then Eli's death would have been for nothing. A minute passed. Then another. Then, light. Rachel gasped. An opening. Up ahead, a vent cover was barely hanging on. Rusted screws, loose edges. They were close. Mia reached it first. She pressed her hands against the metal and pushed. It gave way. Fresh air rushed in as the cover clattered onto the ground below. Danny peered down. A wide-open loading dock. Old crates, rusted trucks. The emergency exit was on the far side, a way out. He turned back to Carter. Can you jump? Carter gritted his teeth. I'll manage. One by one, they dropped down into the loading dock, landing in crouches. Carter winced as he hit the ground, gripping his injured shoulder. Danny steadied him. They were out of the vents. But they weren't safe yet. The room smelled of stale air and gasoline. Dust motes floated in the dim emergency lighting. Danny scanned the area. The exit door was 30 feet away, but between them and the door were 2 trucks and a mess of scattered crates. Mia whispered, "Do you hear that?" Everyone froze. A faint clinking sound echoed through the room. Slow. Deliberate. Danny's stomach twisted. They weren't alone. Rachel raised her crossbow, eyes darting around. Something's here. Then, from behind one of the trucks, a zombie stepped into view. Not just any zombie. It was Ethan. Or what was left of him. His skin was gray, his eyes clouded over, his lips curled into a permanent snarl. His gun hung limply from his belt, forgotten. A deep bite wound festered on his arm. Mia let out a sharp breath. He must have turned after he ran. Ethan's head snapped toward them at the sound. His jaw unhinged, and with a deep, sickening growl, he charged. Rachel fired. Thunk. The crossbow bolt slammed into his chest, but it wasn't enough. Ethan barely slowed, his undead body ignoring pain. Danny grabbed a nearby metal pipe and swung. Crack! The impact sent Ethan staggering, but he didn't stay down. His body twitched, then lunged again. Carter, despite his injury, lifted his pistol and aimed. Boom! The bullet tore through Ethan's skull. He crumpled to the floor, motionless. A heavy silence followed. Rachel exhaled. That was too close. Danny nodded, his grip on the pipe tightening. Let's move. They weaved between crates, stepping over rusted tools and abandoned supplies. Every shadow felt too deep, every sound too sharp. They reached the exit. Danny grabbed the handle. Locked. Damn it, he hissed. Mia quickly checked the nearby storage cabinet. She yanked open drawers, tossing aside old papers and broken radios. Come on, come on. Then, she froze. Danny turned. What? She lifted something small and metal. A key. She didn't get a chance to use it. Because at that moment, the loading dock doors began to rise. The sound was deafening, like metal grinding against metal. Rachel whipped around. No, no, no. The massive steel door lifted, revealing the outside world. And the horde waiting just beyond it. Their moans crashed over them like a tidal wave. Danny's stomach twisted. Who? Then he saw him. A lone figure. Standing just outside the entrance. Not a zombie. A man. Dressed in tattered clothes, his face hidden under a hood. His hand hovered over the control panel, having just activated the door. He had let them in. Danny's mind raced. Who was he? Why? Then he saw the knife at the man's side. The red bandana around his arm. Danny's blood ran cold. Not all survivors are friendly. The stranger smirked, then turned and disappeared into the night. The zombies, freed from their barrier, surged forward. Danny spun. The door! Now! Mia fumbled with the key. Her hands were shaking. Mia! She jammed it into the lock and twisted. The door clicked open. Danny shoved it wide. The group rushed through, the undead only steps behind. Danny was the last one through. He grabbed the door, muscles straining, and slammed it shut just as the first zombie reached them. Bang! 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 The horde slammed against the metal, their fingers clawing for purchase. But they were outside. Alive. For now. Danny turned to the others, his breath ragged. Rachel's face was pale. That guy. He did that on purpose. Danny's jaw tightened. Yeah. Mia's voice was barely a whisper. What if he's not alone? Danny didn't answer. Because he already knew the truth. The dead weren't their only threat anymore. The living were just as dangerous. Danny kept his back against the cold metal door, his breath coming fast and shallow. The pounding from the other side had started to slow, but the horde wasn't giving up. The moans drifted through the thin air, mixing with the night's eerie silence. Rachel checked the area. Where the hell are we? They had emerged into an alleyway, enclosed by looming brick buildings. A single street lamp flickered nearby, casting long, distorted shadows. The city beyond was silent, too silent. Carter leaned against the wall, his face pale, sweat dripping from his brow. His wounded shoulder wasn't getting better. Mia turned to Danny. That guy, whoever he was, he let them in. Why? Who does that? Danny's jaw tightened. Someone who doesn't want us alive. Rachel's hands clenched into fists. We need to find him. If he's part of a group, they might try again. Danny nodded. Agreed. But first, we need to get Carter somewhere safe. Carter let out a weak chuckle. I appreciate the concern, but I'm not sure safe exists anymore. Danny helped him stand. Maybe not. But we'll find something. They moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows. Every alley, every window, Every rooftop felt like a potential trap. The city had always been dangerous with the dead, but now they had to worry about the living, too. After 15 minutes of quiet movement, they found an abandoned laundromat. The glass windows were broken, but the inside looked clear. Danny led the way in, sweeping the place for danger. It smelled of dust, mildew, and old detergent. A few rusted washers lined the walls, their doors hanging open like gaping mouths. Rachel checked the back. "We're clear." Mia knelt beside Carter, examining his wound. "We need to stop the bleeding." Danny dug into his pack, pulling out the last of their bandages. "This'll have to do." Carter winced as Mia pressed the bandage against his shoulder. "Hell of a way to spend an apocalypse." Danny forced a smirk. "Better than being on the other side of that door." Rachel sat down against the wall, reloading her crossbow. "So what's the plan? We can't just sit here." Danny exhaled. "We track that guy. He had a purpose. People like that don't act alone." Mia hesitated. "And if we find them?" Danny met her eyes. "We make sure they don't try this again." A tense silence settled over the group. Then, crunch. A footstep. Outside. Rachel instantly raised her crossbow. Mia covered Carter's mouth, silencing his pained breathing. Danny stilled. Another footstep. Closer this time. The sound of gravel shifting. Danny pressed himself against the wall, creeping toward the broken window. He risked a peek outside. A figure stood in the alley. Not a zombie. A man. Not the one from before, this one was shorter, stockier, wearing a heavy jacket and carrying a rifle slung over his shoulder. Danny's pulse quickened. Rachel moved beside him. "Think he's with the first guy," she whispered. Danny didn't answer. The man turned his head slightly, as if listening. Then, slowly, he raised a walkie-talkie to his lips. "Yeah. They got out. I think they're close." Danny's stomach twisted. The man listened for a second before nodding to himself. "Copy that. Moving in." He slung his rifle forward and took a step toward the laundromat. Danny moved fast. He grabbed a brick from the ground and hurled it down the alley. It clattered loudly against a dumpster. The man spun toward the noise, raising his gun. Danny turned to the others. "Go. Now." Rachel didn't hesitate. She helped Carter up, Mia close behind. They slipped toward the back exit as quietly as possible. Danny waited, listening to the man's footsteps move away, toward where the brick had fallen. Then, Danny followed the others out the back. They ran. Down another alley. Across an abandoned street. Past wrecked cars and collapsed buildings. Danny didn't stop until he was sure they weren't being followed. Finally, he pulled them into the ruins of an old pharmacy. Panting, Rachel bent over. That was too close. Mia peeked through the cracks in the boarded windows. "They're hunting us." Danny stared out at the city beyond. "Not just hunting." Rachel frowned. "What do you mean?" Danny exhaled, his mind racing. The first guy set them up. The second was tracking them. And they were using walkie-talkies. Which meant, "They've got a group," Danny said. "A big one." Mia swallowed. "How big?" Danny's expression darkened. "Big enough that they're not afraid of the dead anymore." Rachel gripped her crossbow. "So what do we do?" Danny looked at Carter, who was barely staying conscious. Looked at Mia, who was trying so hard to stay strong. Looked at Rachel, whose hands were tight around her weapon. There was only one option. "We find them first," Danny said. "Before they find us." Mia hesitated. "And if they're too strong?" Danny's grip tightened on his knife. "Then we make sure they regret ever coming after us." Outside, the city loomed. And somewhere in the shadows, they were watching. The night was thick with silence, broken only by the distant groans of the undead. Danny crouched near the pharmacy's exit, gripping his knife tightly. The others were behind him, Rachel clutching her crossbow, Mia supporting an increasingly pale Carter. "They'll be looking for us," Rachel whispered. Danny nodded. "Then we find them first." Mia frowned. "And do what? Just walk into their camp?" Danny's jaw clenched. "No. We watch. Learn their numbers, their weaknesses." Rachel sighed. "We don't have time for a scouting mission. Carter's not getting any better." Danny glanced at Carter, who was barely keeping his eyes open. His wound was festering. If they didn't find medical supplies soon, he wouldn't make it. Mia bit her lip. "Then maybe we do go in. Not to fight, but to steal what we need." Rachel hesitated. "That's a gamble." Danny met her gaze. "Everything's a gamble now." A long silence. Then, Rachel exhaled sharply. "Fine. But if things go south, I'm putting a bolt in anyone who tries to stop us." Danny smirked. "Wouldn't expect anything less." The plan was simple. Find their hideout. Get in. Take what they needed. Get out alive. They moved quickly, sticking to the shadows. The city was a maze of abandoned cars, crumbling buildings, and lurking danger. Then, they saw it. A warehouse, fenced off with barbed wire and makeshift barricades. Campfires flickered inside, casting long shadows. Figures moved in and out, men and women, armed and dangerous. Mia swallowed. "That's more than a small group." Danny's gut twisted. "Yeah. It's a damn militia." Rachel peered through a crack in the ruined wall. "Looks like at least 15 people. Maybe more inside." Danny scanned the area. A guard tower overlooked the entrance, a rifleman keeping watch. 2 others patrolled near the main gate. Then, he spotted it. A medical tent near the back. That was their target. They waited until midnight. When the fires burned low and the patrols became sluggish, they moved. Rachel went first, slipping through the darkness like a ghost. Mia followed, keeping close to the walls. Danny helped Carter, keeping their movements slow and quiet. They reached the fence's weak spot, a section where the chain link had been bent, likely from a past breach. Danny pulled out his knife and cut the ties holding it together. One by one, they slipped inside. The camp smelled of sweat, dirt, and blood. Snoring came from nearby tents. A few men sat around a dim fire, drinking. Danny signaled toward the medical tent. "Go." Rachel led the way, keeping her crossbow raised. Mia stayed close behind, eyes darting for movement. Danny half-carried Carter, his injured friend barely able to stand. They reached the medical tent and slipped inside. Shelves lined the walls, bandages, antibiotics, painkillers. Mia gasped. "This is more than we hoped for." Rachel grabbed a bag and started loading supplies. Danny set Carter down and dug through a drawer, finding morphine. "This'll help," he muttered. Then, a voice outside. "Hey, did you hear something?" Danny froze. Footsteps. Getting closer. Rachel and Mia tensed. Danny made a split-second decision. "Get Carter out of here," he whispered. Rachel's eyes widened. "What?" Danny pulled his knife. "I'll lead them away." Mia shook her head. "No, we..." Too late. The tent flap opened. A guard stood there, eyes widening. "What the..." Danny lunged. His knife sank deep into the man's side, muffling his scream. Rachel fired her crossbow, another guard went down. Shouts erupted. The camp was awake. Chaos. Gunfire erupted as alarms blared. Danny sprinted through the camp, dodging between crates. If he could pull them away from the others. A bullet whizzed past his ear. Danny dove behind a stack of barrels. Shouts echoed, "Find them! Don't let them escape!" Danny's heart pounded. He turned to run. A figure stepped in front of him. Danny barely had time to react before a rifle butt slammed into his face. Pain exploded in his skull. His vision blurred. The world spun. Then darkness. When Danny came to, his head was throbbing. His hands were tied behind his back. He was inside the warehouse. A group of survivors stood around him, watching. Then, he saw him. The man from before. The one who let the horde in. He stepped forward, a smirk on his face. "You're stubborn. I'll give you that." Danny's jaw clenched. "Who the hell are you?" The man crouched down, his smirk widening. "We're the ones who run this city now," he said. "And you just made a huge mistake." Danny's stomach dropped. Danny's head throbbed as he forced his eyes open. The dim light of the warehouse flickered, casting long shadows across the rusted walls. His wrists burned where the rough rope cut into his skin. Across from him, the man who had set the horde loose stood with his arms crossed, smirking. "You're lucky, you know," the man said, stepping closer. "Most people who sneak into our camp don't get the courtesy of a conversation." Danny lifted his head, blood drying on his temple. "I feel honored." The man chuckled. "Call me Silas." He gestured to the group of survivors behind him, hardened men and women, all heavily armed. "We run the city now." Danny's jaw clenched. "You mean you terrorize it?" Silas crouched, leveling his gaze with Danny's. "Survival isn't terror. It's strength. And that's exactly what I see in you." Danny frowned. "What the hell are you talking about?" Silas stood and started pacing. "I watched you, Danny. You led your little crew through the worst of it. You fought, you survived. You adapted. That's the kind of man I want in my ranks." Danny's pulse quickened. Silas grinned. "Join us, and you live." His voice darkened. "Refuse, and I let my people tear you apart." The threat hung heavy in the air. Danny glanced around. There were at least 10 armed survivors watching him. He was outnumbered, tied up, and alone. But he had one advantage: Silas didn't know the others had escaped. Danny swallowed, forcing his mind to stay clear. If he played this right, he could buy them time. "So what? You just let me waltz in here and take orders from you?" Silas smirked. "Not quite. You'll prove yourself first." Danny's stomach twisted. "How?" Silas turned toward one of his men and snapped his fingers. The door to the warehouse opened, 2 men dragged someone inside. Danny's heart stopped. Carter. Bloodied, weak, his arms bound behind his back. His wound had darkened, infection taking hold. Mia and Rachel had gotten away. But somehow, Carter hadn't. Danny gritted his teeth. "Let him go." Silas ignored him. He pulled out a hunting knife and placed it on a nearby crate. "Here's your test." Danny's gut sank. Silas walked over to Carter and grabbed him by the hair, forcing his head up. Carter groaned weakly. "He's dead weight," Silas said. "Sick. Weak. A liability." Danny's fingers twitched against the ropes. Silas grinned. "Kill him, and you're one of us." The room fell silent. Carter lifted his head, barely able to focus. He tried to smirk. "Damn, tough choice, huh?" Danny's mind raced. He needed to stall. Needed to find a way out. He met Silas' gaze. "And if I say no?" Silas chuckled. "Then I let my people kill you both." Danny's heart pounded. He had to think fast. Carter shifted slightly, murmuring under his breath. "Do it." Danny's blood ran cold. He turned, horrified. "What?" Carter's eyes were glassy, his breath shallow. "You heard me. Take the damn knife and do it." Silas laughed. "Now that's loyalty." Danny's fists clenched behind his back. Carter wasn't giving up. He was giving Danny a way in. A plan formed. Danny took a breath. Fine. Silas' grin widened. Good. A guard stepped forward and cut Danny's restraints. Danny rolled his wrists, flexing his fingers as the blood returned to them. He stepped forward, his legs stiff from being bound. He reached for the knife. It was heavy, its blade gleaming in the dim light. Carter met his gaze. Danny inhaled slowly. Then he moved. Fast. Danny turned the blade, driving it straight into the nearest guard's throat. Blood splattered. The man choked, staggering back. Chaos erupted. Silas shouted, "Kill him!" Danny grabbed the dying guard's gun and spun, firing 2 shots into another enemy. Carter kicked backward, tripping the man behind him. Danny tossed the knife to Carter, who caught it and slashed his restraints. Gunfire blasted through the warehouse. Danny and Carter dove behind a crate, bullets shredding the wood. Carter gasped, pressing a hand to his side. "You could have killed me faster, you know." Danny smirked. "Where's the fun in that?" Carter coughed, but there was a grin behind the pain. "We're screwed." Danny glanced toward the door. "Not yet." Then a loud boom echoed outside. The ground shook. Danny's eyes widened. An explosion. Gunfire erupted from outside. Silas' men turned toward the entrance. Danny used the distraction, he grabbed Carter and ran. They barreled toward the warehouse doors, just as a crossbow bolt slammed into a guard's skull. Danny looked up. Rachel stood on the rooftop, reloading her crossbow. Mia was beside her, holding a Molotov cocktail. She grinned. "Took you guys long enough." Danny laughed, adrenaline surging. Silas roared behind him. "Get them! Kill them all!" But it was too late. Mia lit the Molotov and threw it. The warehouse erupted into flames. Danny and Carter burst through the exit just as the fire consumed everything behind them. They had escaped. But Silas was still alive. And this war wasn't over yet. Flames roared behind them, casting the city streets in a hellish glow. Danny and Carter stumbled forward, smoke stinging their lungs as they joined Rachel and Mia. "Move!" Rachel barked, slinging her crossbow over her shoulder. Carter coughed, his strength nearly gone. Danny threw his arm around his friend, half dragging him. Mia checked their surroundings. "Where do we go?" Danny's mind raced. The warehouse was burning, but Silas and his people weren't dead. They would be coming. "We need a defensible position," he said. Rachel pointed. "The subway tunnels. They're close." Danny hesitated. Underground meant no escape if things went wrong. But with Carter in this state, they didn't have many options. "Let's go." They sprinted through the streets, dodging between wrecked cars and abandoned buildings. The moans of the undead grew louder, the explosion had drawn them in. By the time they reached the subway entrance, dozens of shambling figures filled the streets behind them. Danny yanked open the gate. "Inside. Now." Rachel and Mia slipped in first, followed by Carter. Danny slammed the gate shut just as the first zombie reached it. The creature snarled, pressing its rotting face against the bars. Others followed, their fingers clawing through the metal. Danny backed away. "That won't hold for long." The group turned and descended into darkness. The tunnels smelled of mildew and decay. Their flashlights cast long, trembling beams against the tile walls. "We keep moving," Danny whispered. Carter groaned. "If we go too deep, we'll get lost." Mia adjusted her grip on her crowbar. "Better lost than dead." They pressed forward, stepping over debris and old tracks. Then, Danny stopped. A distant sound echoed through the tunnel. Boots on concrete. Mia whispered, "Tell me that's not." "Silas," Danny muttered. Rachel cursed. He made it out. A voice rang out through the tunnel. "Danny. You can't run forever." Silas' voice bounced off the walls, turning the tunnels into an endless echo chamber. Danny's fists clenched. Mia's face darkened. If we don't do something, he'll hunt us until we're dead. Danny knew she was right. They had no more places to run. There was no way out. So they had to end it. Here. Now. Danny turned to his team. We set a trap. Rachel's eyes narrowed. You got a plan? Danny glanced at the side tunnels ahead. We lure them into a kill box. We make our stand. Carter, pale and weak, still managed to grin. About time. Mia cracked her knuckles. Let's do it. The ambush. They found an old service tunnel, half collapsed. It would force Silas people into a choke point. Danny and Carter positioned themselves behind an overturned subway car. Rachel and Mia took high ground on an old platform. Then, they waited. Footsteps approached. Danny's heart pounded. Shadows flickered at the tunnel entrance. Then, Silas appeared. He was flanked by 6 men, all armed. He grinned. You really thought you could hide? Danny stepped forward from his cover, gun raised. Not hiding. Finishing this. Silas chuckled. Brave. Stupid, but brave. Then, Rachel fired. Her crossbow bolt slammed into the first man's throat. Mia dropped another with a well-placed shot. Danny and Carter opened fire. Chaos erupted. Silas' men scrambled for cover, but they were trapped. Bullets tore through the tunnel. 2 more of Silas' people fell. Mia jumped down, swinging her crowbar. She caved in a man's skull before he could react. Rachel reloaded, taking out another. Silas ducked behind a pillar, firing wildly. Danny's gun clicked, empty. Silas charged. Danny barely dodged as the man tackled him. They crashed against the subway car, fists flying. Silas swung first, Danny barely managed to block. Silas sneered. You're nothing. Danny drove his knee into Silas' gut. The man grunted but didn't go down. Silas pulled a knife. Danny barely dodged the first swipe. The second cut his arm. Pain flared, but Danny didn't stop. He grabbed Silas' wrist, twisting. The knife clattered to the floor. Silas snarled. He swung again, Danny caught his fist and slammed his forehead into Silas' nose. Silas staggered back, dazed. Danny grabbed the knife. Silas looked up. Danny drove the blade into his chest. Silas gasped. His eyes widened. He collapsed to his knees, blood dripping from his lips. Danny stared down at him. Silas chuckled weakly. Guess you win. His body slumped. It was over. Danny turned to the others. The fight was done. Rachel and Mia were breathing hard, standing over the fallen enemies. Carter sat against the wall, bleeding, but alive. For the first time in forever, the city was silent. Rachel exhaled. Now what? Danny looked toward the tunnel ahead. The way was open. Mia smirked. We find a new home. Danny nodded. No more running. No more hiding. They had survived the nightmare. And now, they would rebuild. The end.